Welcome, Ray and Rigo. Let's start off with your names, if you don't mind. Ray.
My name is Ray Ulloa.
And Rigo.
My name is Rigo Reyes.
And these guys are part of this beautiful car club that we'll get to that part later. But for now, I want to start just way back when. Like where were you guys born?
I was born here in San Diego. Grew up here in the South Bay most of my life. I grew up right at the border.
Really?
Right
Like San Isidro? Or?
San Isidro. And I grew up in San Isidro during the 1960s.
Wow.
So I was influenced by a lot of things that was going on at that time, particularly the civil rights movement.
Really?
And because of that, it's what I am today. It's what I do for a living, if you will.
Really?
So
I would imagine, man.
So the civil rights movement was very impactful and influential to us and my generation, where I grew up and where I come from. And literally, what happened to San Isidro pretty much happened to many other underprivileged communities, which was the freeways were coming and you were in the way.
Wow. Yeah.
So we got moved out of San Isidro because they had to make room for the freeways.
Eminent domain, huh?
Eminent domain, exactly. Same thing happened to National City. Old Town National City happened to Logan Heights. And
Right.
it happens throughout the country, pretty much.
I know, man. It's crazy. But I want to talk to you about the border itself. But Ray, so where were you born?
I was born in East Los Angeles, and in the mid '70s we moved to San Diego. So I consider myself pretty much from San Diego because my whole childhood was pretty much in San Diego.
So what triggered that movement from LA? Because most people, especially Mexicans, we gravitate towards LA. A lot of people, that's what they did as soon as they. So how come you guys?
Yeah, as a child, I had asthma, and the doctors had said you need to move close to the coast or the desert land because of the asthma was messing me up. The smog in East LA was pretty
Wow.
rough.
Yeah.
So we moved to a neighborhood in San Diego, the Del Sol area, and since 1978.
Wow.
I've been in San Diego, yeah.
That's a trip. It's funny how life takes you. You
Yeah.
probably your dad probably didn't think about moving to Del Sol, but
No, we were just looking for coastal land or desert land, and being that I had a lot of family in Tijuana, we ended up in that neighborhood, and it was close to the border, close to our family, and that's how I ended up right there in the South San Diego.
so where are your parents from? Like as far as Mexico?
My dad is from the state of Chihuahua, and my
Wow.
mom is from the state of Durango.
Wow.
And they migrated back in the 1950s. My dad did actually, and then he brought my mom across the border. And my dad was probably the classic story, like everybody else. He picked grapes in Delano and ended up working for a chorizo company in East LA and became a mechanic for Sears, and the rest is history.
It's a trip, huh?
Yeah.
Crazy. Did he have anything to do with Cesar Chavez and the movement back then in Delano and all that?
You know what? He probably did. I barely kind of discovered a little bit of that part of his life. Him being a migrant worker, a field worker. He didn't talk too much about that because he was a young man, and what little we do know, it was kind of rough for him because he was no family, no nothing. He just was here and trying to make ends meet and try to get my mom across.
That's a trip, right? Like people don't even think about things like that. Like, for instance, for him as a young man, he was just trying to survive and take care of his family, and he probably just bit his lip and did whatever he had
He
to
went
do.
for it, yeah.
It's crazy. So you say you grew up in San Isidro. Like I was born and raised in Tijuana, and I tell people, even like I talk to older people, and the border is not what it is right now. And even San Isidro, like it was like more free flow, and it wasn't just it's as crazy as it is today. But how was it for you growing up down there?
It was very fluid. It was very fluid in the sense that we had family in Tijuana. My grandmother was in Tijuana, so every weekend we'll go across the border. We will walk that border,
Right.
on a weekly basis, and it was totally different than it is today. And it's interesting because if you talk to people that are actually here, what we call fronterizos,
Right.
if you've heard from the border, the border wall and everything else that's so prevalent right now that it's politically, it's right now kind of like even divisive, if you will. if you're from here, I mean, myself growing up here, I never really saw the border. To us, I mean, we see all this as a region,
Right.
Tijuana included,
Right.
because we have relationships on both sides of the border. Even to this day, I mean, we still do. Even us as lowriders, I mean, we still have a strong relationship with lowriders from across the border. They come over here, we go over there, we support each other, and so on and so forth. So it's very different than how media
Manages it.
manages it,
Exposes it, yes.
and also the perception of people that are not from here. They talk about the border, everybody is criminals, all this crime, blah blah blah, but it's just the media, yellow journalism to a great extent, and also not understanding the reality of the border.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, let's go back to like speaking of low riding, and I know you guys. I mean, this is the biggest, the main thing about you guys, a beautiful car club you got. But take me back. Like, when's the first time you saw like a low rider or a suitor back in the day? Because that's another thing people don't understand. Like, it's kind of like a fashion, if you want to call it that. But back then, it was just a way to stand out. Even the same thing with the cars. It was a form to express yourself, and because to a certain extent you're not American, and to a certain extent you're not Mexican. So like when was what was your first experience as far as like a suit or a lowrider?
It was probably a lowrider. Suits was actually during the 40s, 1940s. And the way I always see it, I've done some research, and I've written a book and did research on this particular topic. The suit aspect of who we are as a people, it's kind of like an evolution.
Right.
From the dress style, it started evolving and converting itself into a vehicle style. You have to take in terms that the suitor, as famous as they became, but it was in a very negative light.
No, yeah.
And it was actually during World War II.
Oh yeah, I mean they got beat up. They got, they were pointing, like people were pointing fingers at them, and not just cops, but like some people, military, they would beat them up, and just because they were different, and it was tough. Actually, it's people don't know this, but it was actually a really bad time. So a lot of respect for those people that kept going through, even though they knew they were targeted, they kept doing their thing,
Right, and lowrider happens to fall right in that. It's kind of like we're an evolution of the Pachuquismo from that area, from the suit Pachucos, and then later on Chucos, and nowadays they're known as Cholos. But without people really realizing the meaning of those words.
Right. Speaking of that meaning, Ray actually showed me a video. It's very well made. That about the word cholo, and it was very interesting, man. That video. Thank you for sending me that.
Yeah.
We'll probably put a little link to it so people can understand a little bit more. But it's trippy, man.
It's a true definition of cholo that some of our people in our own culture don't even know. Rigo turned me onto it, and I found it very interesting because I always knew cholo was a derogatory word towards a certain group of people. And I accepted that because I was that person. But this guy who took it way to a different level and dug really deep on how that word came about, and how that caught my attention a lot.
Yeah, this is very interesting. But same thing. What was your first experience with I'm starting to fall in love with the lifestyle? Because this is like I tell friends of mine about you guys, and I tell them like, hey man, a lot of people nowadays, they fix up a car, they do this, or even they dress a certain way. I mean, these guys are the real deal. These guys, this is their lifestyle. It's not just a fad. It's not. I mean, their cars, they drive their cars. Most of them are show cars, but they drive them. So like, can you remember the first time you said, "Oh man, that's cool, man. I wanna have a car like that, or I wanna be like that"?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm originally from Los Angeles, and as a kid, I grew up in the Boyle Heights area, and then later moved to a community called South El Monte, where there's a big park that's well known out there called Lake. My dad used to take us out there as kids to ride bikes, and every Sunday morning we'd see a whole bunch of lowriders, and I'm talking about maybe 1975.
Wow.
The people that I stood out back in those days was an Imperial's Car Club, Duke's Car Club, and later in 1978 we moved to San Diego, and I was looking for like, man, where's the lowriders in San Diego? And roughly around 80, 81 is when I seen Amigos Car Club at a little community park, and I said, wow, here they are. And just the name, and as I got to know and hear about the history of those guys, I said, man, I was just a little kid in seventh grade probably, and I said, I want to be one of those guys one day.
But hey, Chris, what do you think it was your first experience with like lowrider stuff like that?
Well, I grew up with my best friend was named Alfonso, and his family was from Logan, or his extended family. His uncles were from Logan. So I remember back in the day, his uncle Billy had a '66 Impala, and that was his prized possession, you know. And he had it all original at one point. He had it with hydraulics. I remember it Red's hydraulics back in the day. He had it. It was beautiful. And Alfonso's dad used to run automotive parts. It was EC Mobile Auto Parts in Logan. So RC that was there, and then there was another muffler shop, a couple muffler shops he dealt with down there. So as a young kid, I was down there eating ice cream or delivering auto parts with his dad. So it was a cool experience. The neighborhood has changed a lot over the last 10 years. I mean, I'm sure we get into that, and you guys can express your feelings on that. But I remember just going down and picking up a couple pounds of carnitas at Porky Land and some tortillas and whatnot.
In the good old days.
Good old days.
Good old
days. It's changed a lot, like I said.
But it's amazing. Like he was saying that gentlemen, it was a prized possession. So you guys is your cars is like part of your identity, and it kind of reflects who you are. We know we have your what year is your car?
Mine's a 1929 Willys Knight.
Damn, man, 19. Now why'd you pick that car, or how did that come about?
Well, actually, in 1991, I had another vehicle. I had a 1959 Impala.
Wow.
That was actually went to a car show in LA, and some Japanese broker got attracted to it, and he offered to buy it, and before you knew it, I sold my 59.
How was that like? I mean, that's kind of like your baby. How was it?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't easy.
You were already looking to the next project, or?
No, actually, it was. For one thing, I wasn't planning on selling it.
Wow.
I wasn't planning on selling it. It wasn't until he approached me, and actually, he approached me on that day at the car show, and like many other people, they approach you and they start talking to you, and you talk to them, and you turn around and you forget about it, and it was I think a month passed by when he called me from Japan.
Wow.
Telling me, hey, I'm so and so, and I said, oh yeah, well, who? I didn't remember him.
Right.
And he says, yeah, I met you at the car show, and asked you about your car, if you will sell it, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, whoa, then that's when it finally dawned on me. Well, and I remember that after that, I did remember that I did talk to him, and I gave him a real high price just to get him off my back.
Right.
And he came back, and he had a buyer for the price that I say. So now I say, I opened my mouth, so now I got to
follow
do
through.
it. So once that developed, they took the car in 1992. And I was in the market, and actually I was looking for a smaller. Actually, I was looking for a Ford, and in the search for the Ford and Pomona, the big Pomona swap meet, I ran into this car, and I fell in love with it the minute I saw it.
Wow.
Yeah, and come to think about it, because I'm a big guy, if I would have bought a Ford, because I was looking for a Model A, I probably wouldn't fit on it. So I figured, well, I might as well get this one. I'll definitely fit in this one. Plus, I really liked it because just the style. It was real long. It almost looks like a Rolls Royce, if
Right.
you will. So it looked classy, and I mean, obviously, it wasn't in the condition that I got it. I mean,
Right.
the condition that it is now. When I got it, it was pretty much a project.
And I want to talk about that, because I know before your Blue Suburban, you had a beautiful car too. So how did that happen? Like, first of all, tell me about that original car.
That original car was a 1938 Plymouth, and I restored that one, and I enjoyed it. And at the time, I was looking to buy a home, and I also, I actually put it on the market, and one of our members bought it, and I purchased the home that I'm in now. Needless to say that I had borrowed that money from my dad, and I told him, hey, I'll pay you back your money even if I have to sell my car. And sure enough, I did. I sold my car, and I started looking for another one. And at the time, my family was very young, and I came across that Suburban. So I figured, wow, this is the perfect family lowrider car.
It's that's what's the crazy part. Like I said, a lot of people nowadays, especially with all these TV shows about restoring cars and stuff like that, it's like a prize possession, right? It's like we're gonna take it here and then. But you guys, like even you were thinking about your family, so you bought a Suburban because hey, I got my girls and
Yeah.
they need to fit in there. So you weren't even thinking about like, hey, I'm gonna restore it, it'll be kick ass, and then we're gonna just showcase it. It's a vehicle.
Yeah, it was yeah, I put my family first in that, where, the family was still young. So I figured that, it'd be a good thing to include the family and the wife so I wouldn't catch a couple grief from the wife. But throughout the years, she has supported me.
It's a beautiful car, man. And then the beauty of it is that like I've heard you talk about it before, where you didn't really go crazy on it. I mean, obviously the paint job and the rims, hydraulics, but for the most part, you try to respect the car itself. The
Yeah,
model.
I didn't want to overdress an old car because they pretty much speak for themselves, the body lines and stuff. So I just dressed it up with a candy paint job, and the spoke rims, the hydraulics. But I didn't modify any suspension as far as switch out to what is now known as Mustang 2s, 4 links. I didn't do none of that. The motor is original, the suspension's original, just the
Wow.
hydraulics are adapted on there. And yeah, I just try to keep it as clean and simple. I didn't want to look at me car. I just wanted a cool, clean cruiser.
You certainly did that. Now, let's talk about, like you said, when you found your car, do you fell in love with it, and do you envision it how it's gonna end up, and then you're like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do with it. Like, what was it missing? How was your car when you first found it?
It was pretty much, like I said, it was a project. It was a project. I mean, most people that saw it, the way it looked when I first bought it, I mean, everybody that I talked to thought, "You crazy, man? What the heck? You look like a chicken coop, if you will." And essentially, maybe it was a chicken coop at one time or another. But I mean, when you see a car and you visualize it, that's one thing you do have a vision for it, as far as seeing a little bit ahead of time how it would look, and particularly though that type of vehicle, that style of vehicle, traditionally is more the hot rod style, if you will.
Right, yeah.
So when I picture it, I saw, well, people will see it up in the air or whatever with big tires or whatever. I was picturing it on the floor. I was picturing it low. I was picturing it with small tires. In my mind was already going. So I had a plan for it. I had the minute I saw it, I foresaw that it could be a pretty cool car.
Yeah, no, it turned out great. But what was your guys' first car? Like when you were a youngster, right? Like how old were you when you got your first car? You said, "Hey, I'm gonna turn this into a lowrider."
My first car was actually a 72 Monte Carlo that my dad bought me to go to school.
Those were nice.
And then one day when he went to work, while he was at work, I was getting hydraulics put on it and rims and tires. And needless to say, he wasn't too happy at the time, but he ended up supporting me at the end anyways. Yeah, it was a 72 Monte Carlo, which was the car I used to join Amigos Car Club.
Hey, well, let's talk about that. First of all, technology-wise, it's not the same back then as it is right now, and money-wise and all that stuff. And then plus you're doing it without your dad's permission. But like, how'd you go about that? Did you have friends that knew about hydraulics or?
No, at the time when I built my car, which were a family from National City, they had a shop, Red's Hydraulics, that later became a worldwide company, and they everybody knew in National City that you could go to Red's Hydraulics, drive it in, and drive it out already with hydraulics, and that's how most of the people at the time. You still had people working out of their garages and stuff, but they were kind of like maybe the first. I don't know if I want to use the right word, pioneers for the neighborhood, that where you can actually go like a storefront and go get your car lifted and stuff. There might have been other ones back in the earlier 70s that didn't get as popular as they did. But that was like everybody knew Red's Hydraulics. Go to Red's.
Wow.
They were I'm sure there was people at the beginning, different companies, but these guys kind of they took off and ran with it and made it pretty big.
Now, when you said you used that car to join Amigos, and were you already part of Amigos? So what was your
I'm a founding
member?
Mhm.
What was your first car?
My first car was a 1957 Chevy,
Nice.
and
With the shark tail.
yes, with the tails, and it was a little bit odd in a sense because most people, particularly
Those were hot rods. Speaking of hot rods, those they
hot rods,
modified to be hot
and
rods.
actually the first lowrider I ever saw was a 57 Chevy. And
Wow.
a friend of my brother's right there in San Isidro, and he had hydraulics in the front. I was about 12 years old, probably 12 years old.
Wow.
And he hit the switch and the car went to the ground, and that's, whoa, kind of like, that really caught my eye. And I told myself, well, someday I'm going to own one of these cars. And sure enough, the first car that I bought was a 57 Chevy. It wasn't probably as nice as that one was at that particular time. And you're right. I mean, traditionally, they were more known for as being lowrider. I mean, hot rods. And actually, the car actually belonged to my brothers. I have two older brothers they're into hot rods. They're into speed. That's kind of like they grew up in that era or whatever. So they were very influenced by that. And I was influenced totally opposite of that. So when I saw the car, I saw the potential that it had, and they didn't really want it because it was actually a 4-door, and they didn't want it because it was a 4-door,
Yeah.
and they wanted a 2-door.
Two-door, yeah.
So I saw the potential on it, and they said they sold it to me with a condition. He said, "What's the condition?" I said, "Well, as long as you don't turn into those damn lowriders or whatever."
Wow.
So that was the condition they sold it to me. So at that time I said, "All right, whatever, So I go ahead and pay him the money. Next day I turn around and say, "Shit, I put the car on the floor, man. It's my car now."
My car. Hey, so why do you think that is? Though that like for instance, because I know when I was growing up, like in my 70s, up in Stockton, California, my uncles later went into, especially one of my uncles went deep into lowriding, had his cars, but at first they were like, oh, into hot rods. That's what it was. Like, I mean, Mike, they had posters and they had in their rooms and stuff. So, like in your case, why do you think like you went the lowrider route and your older brothers were the hot rod route?
I think to a great extent, again, influence has to do with it, and the people what you like. To a great extent, you used something earlier that's very important. Some people see these as fads, whatever's popular at the moment, and they go with that.
Right.
And then something else comes on and they go that way and so
Right.
forth. But I think for us, I mean, for me from the get-go, when I decided to be a lowrider, I really committed to it. And I've been at it ever since. I've been lowriding since 1975.
Wow.
And you said, Ray was talking about earlier as far as, the early days of hydraulics. When we lifted the cars back in the day, in my time, there were no shops. It was primarily whatever you came across, what we call in the streets Chicano ingenuity. And
That's what I'm talking about.
And essentially that's what it was. And a lot of it was pickup materials, and a lot of it we used to go hunt for parts at the military surplus stores.
Wow.
That's where we would get the cylinders. That's where we would get some of the parts, the hoses and things of that nature. Of course, the hoses weren't made for that, so we would pop a lot of hoses. That was almost on a daily basis. But again, that was all the fun of it, and a lot of the cars get lifted in garages or alleys or backyards or whenever. Again, there were no shops. There were no specialty shops. Now today, it's
crazy.
It's become a business.
It's funny because Chris and I were talking about checking out a couple websites, and it's a whole industry out there. It's,
Definitely.
They got anything and everything you need, from parts, anything you want to modify or original parts, or just, anything you want to customize, it's out there. It's crazy. Remember that?
Lowrider magazine is is there a magazine anymore, or is it all online?
It's all advertising, right?
Yeah, it's all advertising everywhere, all up and down each side of it. I mean, like, it seems like it's blown up.
Yeah.
I remember.
They don't even exist on paper anymore.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Yeah.
It's all online.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and not only that, but I think the important part to talk about here, I think to focus on is how something that came from the streets, that came from my neighborhoods, from the alleys, now it's become so corporate, it's become so business driven
Oh yeah.
to the point that the average lowrider today uh, don't know much about street cruising. Their whole thing is car shows and competitive and trophies and things of that nature.
Yeah.
When we started, it wasn't none of that. I mean, it was all about the
That
streets.
was like a side effect, but of your lifestyle. But it wasn't. You guys never set out to. Oh, I'm gonna fix it, so I'm gonna showcase it at a car show.
That was never the objective.
Right.
That was never the goal. I mean, that came along, but at the same time, when you get older, you start analyzing, you start realizing, you know what? We're fixing our cars, we're investing all this money for somebody else to make money. And you know,
Right.
the promoters are the ones that are making the money.
Right.
It's not us. I mean, we're the ones that are investing into this,
Yeah,
and
that's-
into the
that's-
vehicles,
that's your life.
and people are paying to come and see our cars, and yet you know you go out with a trophy if you're lucky, and then becomes so political that you know it's not even worth it. You know, it's more of a headache. It's more aggravation, and I think the most important thing here is that then you start losing track, or you start losing track as far as of the origins of how everything started. You know,
Right.
the streets are forgotten about, and everything's so focused on the car show circuit.
Right.
And today, I think we're at the age that we've been there, done that, and we want to go back to the streets. You know, we need to go back to the streets.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, so Ray, with your Monte Carlo, how does that come about? Like, do you befriend people like Rigo because they're already part of the club, and then you start saying, "Hey, I'm interested," and then here's my comment. How did that? I mean, it might be different nowadays, but like back in the day, how did that happen with your Monte Carlo?
Actually, it happened when I did see the car club. I was too young to join the car club, so actually, I started a bike club,
There we go.
That's
That's how you do it.
yeah. So when I started the bike club, me and another friend of mine, we said we should call it Amigos, and then somehow we ended up making contact with Amigos, which were older guys, and we said we want to make a bike club with your guys' name, and that's how that came about.
Wow.
So I think we started the bike club in 1982, and in 1984, the little kid grew into a young adult and was able to drive a car, and that's how I got my 72 Monte Carlo that my dad got me to go to school.
did you modify without his?
I modified it without his permission, and yeah, that's how that came about.
No, but to get into the club, I mean, you didn't just need to have hydraulics. There's other criteria, right? Or
Yes, there is a criteria, and I think this is also good to emphasize in a sense because when we started the club, and we had another car club before that. Actually, we broke up a car club that we had was by the name of the Casinos,
okay,
and the Casinos actually initiated in 1972, and in 1977 we decided to disband that club to start a new club, primarily because that particular club already has sort of like an image or a reputation of being from across the border, being more like a Tijuana. They were very associated with Tijuana
Okay.
and the whole scene that was happening over there. And by that time, we already kind of started focusing more and more on what's happening here in San Diego. But here in San Diego, we still had that image. All those guys are from TJ, you know, blah blah blah. Although we were not.
right.
So we decided, you know what? Why don't we start something from fresh? And in 1977, we started Amigos Car Club. And actually, Amigos Car Club is a chapter. It's actually a chapter. The original chapter, it comes from East LA.
Wow.
And we made the connection with the people from East LA. And one thing led to the other. Before you knew it, we had a chapter here in San Diego. And the reason I mentioned this is because I was 20 years old when we started Amigos.
Wow.
And I was instrumental in the sense that I developed bylaws and also standards for the club at that particular time. And to this day, we still live by the same bylaws and the same
That's
standards.
a trip, man.
So
20. What were you doing at 20 years old, bro?
Ooh, no, we don't discuss that here. I was up to no good.
That's so. I mean, do you have met Ray, and then like how did that happen? The car, and how do you guys approve a car and approve a member?
There is a process there is a process that we go through, and we practically focus more on the person than we do the car. And I think that's important also to note, because if it goes the other way around,
Anybody can have a car.
anybody can have
Right.
a nice car or whatever, but if the person's a jerk, or the person, and then it reflects on you, it reflects on the whole membership.
Right.
So in that sense, we try to filter the person first, but at the same time, we try to motivate, and we try to have them understand what our standards are. And our standards really are not that difficult, but we are known for workmanship, for cleanness, and we are very particular as far as being sure that the standards are well respected, that the car is spotless. Like if it has a chip or anything like that, that's a big no. That's addressed. But literally, you don't really need to have a candy. It could be a stock paint job as long as it's clean. A stock interior as long as it's clean, super clean. Hydraulics is definitely one of the main things that we did focus on, because for us that's part of being a traditional lowrider. Today's influence it's all over the place. You got all this new technology, people with airbags and all this other stuff.
Right.
For us, it's still hydraulics, man. It's still hydraulics.
Old school.
Old school, yeah, definitely.
Hey, so I know that like most of your cars are older cars; they're classics. So, but at the time, like the '72 was kind of fairly, even at that time, what is it, like a 10-year-old car?
Yeah.
And that part of the criteria also back then, or it was?
No, part of the criteria is as long as the car is domestic.
Okay.
A domestic vehicle. Not was we won't admit Toyotas or anything like that.
Right. Just
Yeah, just American made, and also again the hydraulics is a must, and also one of the things that we also stress is within the tradition of lowriding, it's the premium Sportway 520 tire, which is the smallest tire you could get. That's part of our tradition, and actually we're known for that.
Yeah. So what happened to the Monte Carlo?
The Monte Carlo got sold, got crashed,
Holy-
and then I just moved on to another car. I've probably owned like 4 cars already that I built for Amigos Car Club, and yeah, you get attached to them, but you always strive for a little better or a little older. But yeah, that's right now I'm at the Suburban. I don't think that one's going anywhere no more because I'm a little too old to start from scratch again.
It's because that's the other thing, man. It's a process. Like it takes. That's what I tell people about you guys. I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's definitely not just. It takes a commitment, man. To if you start off with a car and you have a vision for it, but to follow through. How many cars do you see in people's garages and people's yards, and they're just projects, right? And years go by, and eventually they just resell them, and without really touching them. I mean, that's like to you guys' credit. I mean, you guys follow through with that stuff. So you don't have it in you to do to.
I don't think I have it in me to restore another car. Yeah. When you're younger, you're more eager, more ambitious to see that rust car or whatever, into something, a form of art. But as you get older, yeah, you get a little more tired. And even like Rigo was mentioning, the car show scene. As we get older, we'd rather go to what we call the backyard buggies, the little picnics and stuff like that, because you can drive away from that when you're tired. And the car shows, it's an all day thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of money, and really that's not. I don't think that's who we are anymore. We're just regular guys, want to go hang out, drink a cold beer, and go home and just drive your car around a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think one important factor, you mentioned something earlier that I think is important to note. The difference between when I started lowriding back in that day in 75, 76, everybody and their grandmother wanted a new car. wanted a 75, a 76.
Right.
Because they were very popular. They were boats, and those long cars are very sleek. So they look very nice. So most everybody, and I think that's what made it so easy for people that did get into it because of fat to make it easier for them. And there was a very few, actually, at that time, there was very, very few guys that would fix up old cars and make them into lowriders because they weren't as attractive as a brand new
Right.
car. So, and it's interesting how now, today, is the other way around.
Well, I mean, obviously, like I said before, all these TV shows have an impact on people, trying to do it now. But I think also people realize that the cars back then had a lot of character, man. It was the designs, the curves. It was just, it's just different. I mean, the car itself is,
The cars had style.
yeah, right, right. It's just, I find myself like, I mean, obviously the new cars are great and all that, but like back then, man, it's just something else. Like, what was your car growing up?
The first car I had was a '67 Barracuda.
Oh.
My grandfather gave it to me, but I had stolen a Ford Galaxy 500.
Those were like big
Yeah.
boats.
Right, and I was racing another guy. I imagine a guy. I was in this guy in a little Fiat, and I'm in a 500, and all I can say is his stopped a lot better than the Ford did, and I wound up crashing that, and had to sell my Barracuda to pay for the expenses of the car I crashed.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't steal it. I borrowed it.
Right,
That's what I
right.
wanna say.
But still,
yeah.
damn, man.
Yeah, that was my first car, and then I had many more after that, but nothing as cool as what these guys got.
Now, everything. I mean, hydraulics, the lowrider scene, and all that. Like, what have you seen as far as like other car clubs in the scene? Because I know you guys are part of that Chicano Park Day, and it's good to see all these clubs come in and they bring their cars. You think it's expanding and people are getting to learn more about the culture, or do you think it's like a fad right now?
I think if you look at the overall picture, I think it's a little bit of both. There is some people out there that want to learn. And it's interesting because probably the last 10 years, 12 years or so, that we've seen sort of like an emergence of older guys my age, that I known for forever. I grew up with them, some of them, but I never knew that they were into lowriding or they liked lowriding. Maybe they did like it, but then they could never afford it when they were younger because they got married or whatever. They had a family.
Right.
Now they got into the age where the kids are out. The kids are out the door in college or whatever, or
Yeah, they moved on.
They moved on.
They're on to the next phase of their life.
And now they can afford to have a lowrider. So there's a very strong. Actually, there's a few car clubs that have developed like that are people that are older, and for the first time they own a car or they have a car, and those are the folks that are eager to learn, because although they have the age, but they were never into the scene. They never knew the ins and outs as far as what it is to be in the car club, what it is, to work on an old car or whatever. So those guys are the ones that are somewhat more eager to learn in my experience. And you also have new generations of lowriders, and those new generations are the ones that get influenced fairly easy by Lowrider magazine, by what they see on the car show circuit. They see those brand new spoke wheels, all different colors or whatever. Like for us, we're from the old school. We don't like any of that stuff. That's too like you said, that's too look at me type of deal. We're still chrome. We don't even like gold plate or anything like that. To us, it's gotta be chrome. It's gotta shine. It's gotta, that's the school that we come from.
Right.
And we're definitely old school, traditional lowriders, and that's something to be understood, because within the different car clubs today, there you have people that they don't want nothing to do with hydraulics, they don't want nothing to do with airbags or whatever, and they just want to drive stock, but yet still belong to a club, and that's fine and dandy for them because that's their standards, that's
right.
their process or whatever. but for us, I mean, it's still old school mentality, old school, and hopefully we'll continue to we die, you know.
Yeah, right. Hey, but it's good to hear that because I do see you go some places and you see kind of older people with their hot rods and you know that you can tell they've been on that for a while. So it's good to know that other older gentlemen like us are getting into the lowriders scene and not just buying a car just for a show, but just they want to learn and they want to be like part of that. Like you said, maybe they couldn't when they were younger. They
Right.
didn't have the time because that's one thing. Like it's not cheap to have a lowrider, right?
It's not cheap. It's not cheap, but I think for us, what's worked out pretty well is the fact that we do belong to an organization, that we do belong to a car club that an established car club, and within the club, within the membership, you have guys with different skill sets.
I was gonna ask you about that because I know that one of you guys does a pinstripe, right?
Right.
And I mean that's an advantage, right? You're not just knocking on doors and see if you get lucky with a guy that knows how to do
Right.
it.
Whether it be paint stripes, airbrush work, anything like that, and we have other members that are mechanics. We got other members that are painters. We got other members that are have a different type of skill set. We got a couple guys that are really good with hydraulics. So all that helps out because at the end of the day, if you were to pay for
Top dollar,
shop,
I mean, the
top
real-
dollar, I mean it does cost us, but it costs us beers and carne asadas.
So what's usually what's the most expensive? As far as the process of, a lowrider. What's the paint job? Is it the hydraulics? What is the most expensive?
Probably the paint job.
The paint job. Nowadays, it's obviously the times have been different. We're hearing guys are spending anywhere from 120,000 and up on everything, on a full lowrider.
Right.
And for us, yeah, I don't think we've ever gone that close. But like Rigo says, we're a traditional club. But you ask yourself, what is the purpose of spending that much money? Is when you can't really drive it. A lot of those guys are scared to drive them. They trailer them, and they're beautiful cars. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of money, and you lose a little bit of the tradition of the lowriding. The lowriding came from the streets, the parks, the liquor stores, wherever. I don't. Most of those guys will not do that with those types of cars because they're very expensive cars.
They're,
I mean,
they're,
yeah,
they're known as trailer queens.
Yeah. Well, because it's like a hobby, right? And then there's a lot of people out there with money, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's not knocking it. That's what it is. But the only bad part is that traditional lowriding started from the street,
Right.
and a lowrider was meant. It wasn't a showcase. It was like, that's my vehicle, man. But I just want to I want to look good. I want to feel good when I'm in it, but driving it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said something that and you stressed it earlier, but I wanna double stress it in a sense because there's a misconception that what we do here is a hobby and it's not hobby to us is golf. You go play golf, that type of deal. To us, this is a way of life. This is a way of life. We breathe this. Every day,
Right.
every
right,
day,
right,
day
right.
in, day out. This is what we do, and this is who we are.
Now, what do you guys think about? I mean, over the years, now I think it's getting a little bit better, and people appreciate the culture and the lowrider scene, the cars, the beauty, and they understand that there's a lot of work, blood and sweat that goes into the cars, but there's also sometimes a wave of negativity associated with it. But you guys just keep on. You never got discouraged or anything like that.
Well, one of the things that we stress is and actually it's part of our mission as far as who we are as an organization, and it is to promote a positive image of lowriders and communities, particularly our barrios. You're right. Unfortunately, we've had a bad rap, almost a stereotype, if you will,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that still exists today, unfortunately. But at the same time, very little attention is put upon the whole positive things that we do in the community. Like you said, Chicano Park, we've been the coordinators of the Chicano Park celebration as far as the car show is concerned, working with the Chicano Park Steering Committee for over 39, going on 40 years that we have been the host
Wow.
of that event. I'm been a part of the Chicano Park Steering Committee for 45 years now. Again, that's because that's my background or whatever. But again, going back to the point that as far as the image or the stereotype, and particularly as it becomes more and more acceptable, I think the media to a great extent has sensationalized it in a sense.
Yeah.
In a sense, how they're being used in movies or whatever, which at the end of the day doesn't make any sense that anybody's going to spend that type of money or that type of investment in a car is going to use it to do a criminal act. But yet that's the way it's being portrayed in the movies and TV shows and things of that nature. Another important factor here, and particularly for me, that I've seen the transition and I've seen the evolution of lowriding, has been how it's being used. When it did become more and more acceptable, it became more mainstream, if you will. The whole music industry got a hold of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And particularly, with the whole rap scene. So here I am myself, a guy from that's a lowrider that's been a lowrider for many, many years. I've been portrayed by the media, by these videos or whatever, with gangster rap and all this other stuff, gangster this, gangster that, when I don't even like rap. But yeah, that's the way I'm being portrayed.
Right.
So that kind of it just strengthens the stereotypes that people have.
Yeah, you know what? Because I've known you guys for a while now, and then I always tell my friends, it's unfortunate. I said all these guys, they got jobs, they got homes, they got it's not as far as apart from that stereotype that is portrayed. I said, man, all these guys. I mean, it's the only difference is because that is their lifestyle, and it's not a fad. That's who they are, and the cars and the dress code and all that. That's part of them. That's like going to a surfer guy and said, hey, bro, cut your hair. That's him.
One of the beauties of our culture is that whether people like it or not, it has trickled over to the Harleys, to the bikes, to the European cars, to the SUV cars. If you look at a lot of those cars and bikes now, they have the flake paint jobs, the candy paint jobs, the chrome, and whether they like it or not, it all came from us. and it's pretty cool because like lowriding has become worldwide, where we experienced in 2015, I believe, in Japan, how they absorbed our culture. And to me, I was very impressed that they always took the time to dig deep into our culture. And to a certain extent, I think they knew our culture better than us.
It's crazy. I was when you touched on the fact that a Japanese gentleman bought your car. I remember that it's amazing how Japanese love our culture, and then it's I've seen videos where they're like straight up like the real deal,
Oh, yeah.
and then they get crazy excited when they see like a let's call it a quote unquote real lowrider. They're like, oh, this is the real deal. I know you guys took a trip over there and sent some cars and stuff. That must have been crazy, right? That how did that happen?
Well, it was crazy in a sense, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of like reluctant about even going. To some extent, I felt that maybe the Japanese were trying to steal our culture, and deep inside, I think I was having that internally. I was having that kind of like battle in between myself.
Right.
So one of our members has a connection and has had different business ventures with some of the Japanese. So we got to know a few of the Japanese before we went over there. And actually, the main promoter that was sponsoring that event in Japan, which was actually the largest car show, the largest lowrider car show in the world, and it was. I mean,
Wow.
It was huge. That thing was huge. I never attended here in the United States. I never attended anything that big.
How many cars did you guys send over there?
We just took one car.
Just one.
One car.
Were you nervous?
The owner was.
Yeah,
That's a long trip, man, to go.
They took the vehicle, I think, a month and a half before because it had to be shipped, and he was nervous all the way through.
I would.
He was nervous all the way through.
What car was that?
It was a 1936 Dodge
Wow.
that belongs to Ralph Palacios, and it was special. You know, there was about 10 members that went in the trip, and plus another delegation of 20 other friends and people here from San Diego that went along. I mean, at the end there was about 30 of us that went. You know, here from San Diego.
So did you change your kind of mentality once you committed? Did you say I'm gonna actually expose our culture? I'm gonna try to teach him. I'm gonna try to.
Frankly, I went, and I can't speak for myself. I try to approach it with an open mind, but deep inside, I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of doubts. I had a lot of, you know, I don't know if I should go.
What are we doing?
But you know what? Pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised as far as how, not only how they treated us, because I mean they threw the red carpet at us, which, you know, that's a big plus.
Right.
But the love and respect that they have for the culture, and like Ray says, you know, they frankly, they see me, I guess, to a certain level because I was the elder, and that culture is very respectful for the elders. So you know, they kind of treated me almost with white gloves to a good extent. Which to me was kind of odd because I'm just another guy. Hey,
where's my beer? Just bring me a Sapporo or
right here. Say, he's drunk. Don't pay attention to him. And but in any case, it was a very interesting experience. It was probably the highlight of my life as far as besides everything they did for us. It's just the love and respect they have for the culture. That you cannot buy. That you cannot buy, and I like to share this because it's so important. It was so impactful, and actually, it was pretty emotional to us because lowriding has styles. Everybody is into lowriding, and depending where you're from. LA, for example, has a long history and tradition of lowriding, but in our opinion, LA is more Hollywood than we care to be. Mm-hmm. The Northern California, San Jose, San Francisco, whatever, they have their own style. They have their own way of doing things. San Diego has its own.
Right.
And for us, trying to represent San Diego, the guy, our friend from Japan asked us, well, you know, you guys we're taking the car over there. What do you guys want to do for display? What can I get for you? And, you know, he's trying to be supportive or whatever. And I told him, you know what? We're not like that. You know, we don't want to be bells and whistles.
Flashy.
We're not flashing. We just give us a corner and we'll take it from there, you know. And actually, all we took was a couple sarapes. We took some sarapes, a couple bottles of tequila. To use.
Hey, now we're talking.
Yeah. To use for display and afterwards.
I was gonna say because I mean, thankfully I have some experience with some Japanese through my work, and they're actually it's a different culture, but like when we're at work, they're like all business, but outside of work. They're all fun, man.
They let loose.
I always tell people, like the first time that I went to this thing with them and we started drinking and stuff. I'm kind of dating myself, but there was a movie back then that is called The Gremlins, and those are little things that like are all nice and cuddly, but when you put water on them, they go nuts, they go berserk. That's how these guys were like that. All of a sudden, they were like chandeliers and drinking and sake and beer and wine. I'm like, what the hell? And then the next day, you know, I'm being Mexican and stuff, and like I show up like, hey, that was cool last night. I'm all happy. They're back to business. Oh, Carlos-san, good to see you. Hey,
what happened here?
What happened? That we were pals.
Right.
No, it's
that's
different,
very true.
But it's I mean, just different culture, different. But I'm glad you guys did that because I believe the more exposure, the more you try to showcase your culture. And to other people, and the same way, the other people, the more we understand each other, I think it's harder to not appreciate somebody if you know, the more you know them, the less chance of you trying to do something to piss them off.
And,
you know what I mean?
And you said something very important that I think is very true, that the more you know them, you know, and the more you understand that you have more in common than you don't.
That's the craziest thing, man. If we
and even with the language barrier.
Yeah.
because we didn't know Japanese and they do very little English, so it's
Right.
kind of like, you know, but we got along.
But it's crazy. You guys had a point of interest that it was a lowrider lifestyle, right? Lowrider cars, and just from that, like you said, you didn't even speak Japanese, but still you hang. And then I'm sure they understood when you said, "Hey, we're gonna bust out with the tequila right now.
Oh, yeah.
Try this. This it's kind of like Mexican sake."
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
they knew what it was.
Oh yeah.
They knew what it was.
They've had it before. You could tell they've had it before.
Wow.
But let me finish the story I was telling you. As far as the display, we showed up with simple
Couple zarapes,
sarapes
tequila,
or
down
whatever.
and dirty.
And the guy, when we asked him, well, where's our spot? Where's our place at? You know, and the guy, like, I don't know, we're about 200-300.
We were inside
yards.
a big convention
It's
center.
a big convention center. I mean, like 300 yards or whatever
Wow.
away. So we couldn't really tell because we were that far away. And he says, "You guys are over there by that banner over there." So we started walking over there. And the closer we looked, I mean, the closer we got, he had put a big display on us, the wall, our back wall. It was a 9 feet by 30 feet
Long.
picture long canvas
Wow.
of Chicano Park.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
That's cool.
Of Chicano Park. So that was our background.
Jeez.
And so we all, I mean, I was walking and I was the first one because I've been involved with so much sport.
Man, I got
Chicano
chills
Park.
just
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to think about that.
Well, believe me, it brought me it brought me to tears, you know, in a sense, because we're halfway around the world.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I felt like I never left. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it was a feeling that I can't describe, man. It was a feeling I can't describe, and I think I turned around. I think we all lost it, man, because it was that meaningful and that powerful, you know.
Yeah.
It was. And on top of that, he says at the end of the day, they let us have it. They said, we want you guys to take this with you,
Wow.
and he did. And actually, I have it.
Yeah, it was very impactful to see that they picked Club Amigos to represent San Diego and also represent the community because they picked one of the pillars that says Barrio Logan. We're not from Barrio Logan, but we have a lot of respect for that community. We've put in a lot of work for that community, and we
Right.
were also honored to have a pillar and let us put our mark up there, our trademark. And
It's beautiful, yeah.
Everybody was pretty humbled to see that, and a lot of clubs that did go out there said, "Hey, you guys put San Diego on the map." I said, "No, we didn't. All of us did. All you guys, everybody, the whole entourage of people." I said, "We all did it." You know, I didn't want to take credit for that or our club to take credit for that because everybody that was there took their little grain of sand to Japan and said, "Wow, you know,
Right.
enjoy our culture with people halfway around the world."
Yeah, man. Yeah. Speaking of that pillar, it's great. We talked about it before. I told Rigo, like, it's beautiful. First of all, the fact that it's Amigos, the name itself, you know, everybody, even American, they know, oh, they say Amigo for everything because they know that it's, you know, friend. But I think it's kind of sad actually that a lot of people in San Diego County don't know about Barrio Logan and the park itself and all the culture that's there. But I think that pillar, because you can see it from the freeway. And to me, man, I said, it's like a welcoming card. It's like, hey, man, we're friends down here. Just come check it out, you know? And I think it turned out great, man. And hopefully we go back to, I tell people all the time, it's just getting to know, you know, people, getting to know their culture. If you do a little bit more of that, there's a less chance of you know, to easily hate on somebody or, you know, whatever, critique somebody if you don't know. But once
or stereotype them.
yeah, unfortunately. Hey, well, it's been a blast. Thank you for joining us on this crazy ride. I think it'll help people to understand a little bit more. I think the beauty of it is like you guys like from the street and, you know, to have your cars, to have been, you know, 40 plus years with Chicano Park, all that matters. Like, but before we go, like, I know Ray doesn't want to build another car, but like what's kind of next for you or for the club or for, as far as, you know, you low riding?
As far as low riding, I think I hit the sand already on this one, but I also have a goal that is pretty much Rigo's goal, but I want to see it come through one day is to have a clubhouse and to store all our memorabilia and history so that it doesn't get thrown away when we're no longer here. it's very important. Rigo has taught us that to document your history so that nobody else tells you your own history. And to me, it's very important to try to keep that tradition and have a building where we can say, you want to know who Amigos was or is? This is who they were and how they started and how they struggled and how they paid tickets, whatever. But all our artifacts there for other people to enjoy what we have enjoyed and what we have built.
I think you already have the prototype because your garage is kind of like it's cool, man. It's like a passage through time.
It's like a shrine.
Right. And you see these crazy posters way back then when I guess it was like $3 or something to get into a dance or something. It was crazy. So you already have like a microcosm of what you want to build. How about you, Rio?
My biggest thing is hopefully contribute in any way for this to continue, to this to go on. For me, it's maybe to some extent maybe a little bit more selfish in a sense because I hate to see something that I started or I helped start not continue.
Right.
And foster. I like to foster the next generations with a little knowledge that I have. And so hopefully they could continue when I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, man. That'd be sweet. And I think it's gonna happen. I think you guys have done a great job, and I think you guys being out there, part of the community, just to keep that flame going, right? And not only that, just I would like to see people get more interested in and read a little bit about the roots and why we're here, and the fact that we got a long way to go, man. I mean, especially now times. I think, but this is you guys have done a great job of representing kind of who we are and where we come from, man. So thank you very much, man.
Thank you guys
thank
for
you
having
for
us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in today, gentlemen. Very much appreciated.
Thank you guys.
And
Yeah.
your hospitality.
Opportunity.
right on, man. All right, that's it. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Next time on the other side. Thank you very much. From BLDG Studios in San Diego, we're out.